So the story I want to tell you tonight is about a young lady I met nearly 2 years ago. She was a senior in high school when we met, the type of person that we journalists love to call an all-American girl. When I met her in the halls of Central High School, she was a bubbly teenager who favored skinny jeans and hair that cascaded down her back in waves. She managed perfectly that envious combination of being both popular and smart. Her high school schedule was filled with the toughest courses that Central High offered. She always sat in the front of the room, her bedazzled backpack bulging with textbooks and notebooks and sparkly lip gloss. And she excelled at everything she did. She was a state track champion 3 years in a row. She was a class president. The mayor chose her to sit on his youth council, and one could always find her in the center of a gaggle of girls who just wanted to be in her orbit. And unlike many of a high school queen bee, she wielded her power not with clicks and barbs, but with grace and kindness. Her insanely deep dimples never quite vanished from her cheeks. Everyone loved this girl. Her teachers, her classmates, her coaches, even her younger sisters who idolized her and tried to match their academic achievements to hers. She was, like I said when we met, a senior in high school, the homecoming queen who dated the football star, the type of girl for whom we believe the doors of opportunity will fly open. Imagine this girl in your mind. Imagine her future. Can't you just see her leading the debate team on some leafy Ivy League campus? Can you picture her landing a coveted internship at some big city firm? Now let me tell you her name. Should do the slide. Her name is Delisha. Did the record just scratch? I want you to look at that apostrophe in her name. That apostrophe foreshadows a counter-narrative, one that may already be forming in your minds. It's a giveaway, a type of shorthand, a justifiable subtraction for this girl's true place in the American story of equal opportunity. That apostrophe, so often perceived as a gratuitous flair, a punctuation inserted by an uneducated mother that serves as a neon bright flashing light in the American mind. Just like that, the blonde, sun-kissed imagery of the all-American girl disappears. For many, many Americans, Delisha's name means two things, black and poor. And I ask you, have you ever seen a girl like this, with a name like this, called an all-American girl, like ever? Oh, these names, the Lakeishas, the DeAndres, the Rashondas, and the Keishans, sight unseen, close the heart of mainstream America. In truth, study after study shows Americans with names that sound and look black are discriminated against in schools, when searching for jobs and housing, and even when contacting their elected officials. If the name looks black, the elected official is less likely to contact them back. Despite these made only in American names, they are the opposite of all American. They are in fact considered lesser Americans. Their caste and their class means that they are somehow deserving of the poor schools and the decaying neighborhoods and the low-paying jobs that they get. So no, despite everything I just told you about Delisha, we just can't seem to think of a girl like Delisha as all-American, as bright stars worthy of every golden opportunity that our nation has to offer. Instead, we consign girls like her to an education that is all too American, one that is separate and unequal. Delisha, like hundreds of thousands of black kids across the country, spent 13 years in schools that her school board had gerrymandered to be completely black and almost completely poor. And then those separate schools were systematically deprived of the resources we bestow on our all-American schools. For 13 years, Delisha studied in schools that got the worst teachers and the weakest instruction, and at one point, while the whitest high school in Delisha's district had more than a dozen advanced placement courses, Delisha's high school offered none. It didn't have a newspaper nor yearbook. It didn't even offer physics. Now, Delisha is a smart girl, as I said, and she knew that the Supreme Court had banned school segregation in 1954. But she also knew that in 13 years in public schools, she'd never had a single white classmate. Still, she was a deeply compassionate girl who understood that elected officials and the white families who lived across the street from her school but refused to send their children there weren't raving and rabid racists. So because of that, despite her circumstances, she still believed in the American dream. That if she worked hard, it didn't matter where she came from, she'd have as much of an opportunity to secure America's bounty as everyone else. A curious girl with big dreams, she anticipated going to a college where she'd finally get to learn with and make friends with students of different races, with white and Asian and Latino students, the types of people she'd seen only in passing at the mall or in the aisles of the Piggly Wiggly, but never had the pleasure of sharing pillow fights at a slumber party or discussing Shakespeare in class. One night as we talked, she wondered if white people had movie theaters in their homes. I smiled at her, thinking she was just joking, but the face that peered back at me was entirely earnest. She had no idea what white people had in their homes. She'd never been inside of one. In the bounty of America, segregation had made her life so small. But she didn't know that then. And so she sat in her ACT test prep course with white kids from the integrated high school and saw how many things they'd been taught in school that she knew nothing about. Her confidence was shaken, but it wasn't destroyed. Then she took the ACT, and when she went online to look at her test scores, the confidence that had taken years to build dissipated. Poof, like that, it was gone. Here she was, the top student at her school. She'd taken the toughest courses it had offered, but her score was a 16. She took the test again, and then a third time. Her score didn't budge. And while kids like her at other schools found themselves pouring through mounds of mail from the colleges that were courting them, Delisha came home each day to mailboxes that remained coldly empty. All her hard work, her leadership, her effort had mattered little because colleges didn't much care for a working class girl from a failing black high school who could only earn a 16 on her ACT. That's when Delisha, at the tender age of 17, came to understand that the good intentions of good people don't matter. Only their actions do. She understood that the very people who say they value integration and who mean it when they say it, the liberals, the progressives, the New Yorkers, are in truth willing to accept the most devastating inequalities. That people who embrace integration and equality as an ideal, as a belief system, would fight tooth and nail to avoid putting their children in a school full of kids with apostrophes in their names. And that these good people, and they are good people, want to believe that the modern version of separate but equal isn't anywhere near as terrible as that old Jim Crow version it replaced. Should you do the last slide? And it is this delusion that allows them to ignore the evidence within their sight. Today, they say, it's about class, not race. The segregation is about test scores, not race. It's about neighborhoods, not race. It's about choice, not race. It's about anything but race. They insist that they really do believe the Delishas of this world are just as worthy as their own children, even as they admit they'd never put their children in the schools we build for the kids with apostrophes in their names. Thank you.